I walked into that restaurant believing my mother finally wanted to fix our relationship. I walked out realizing she had invited me there to destroy me, in front of everyone. At the time, I didn't know it would become the night that changed my life. I didn't know it would expose the truth about my toxic mother, my family, and a level of family betrayal I never thought I'd survive. But I remember every second of how it began. My name isn't important. What matters is that I was the kind of daughter people describe as easy. I didn't argue, I didn't push back, I didn't ask for much. For years, I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet long enough, my mother would eventually love me the way she loved everyone else. She never did. Growing up, my mom had a way of making everything look perfect from the outside. Church on Sundays, family dinners, smiles for neighbors. But behind closed doors, she specialized in subtle public humiliation disguised as jokes and concern. "You're just too sensitive," she'd say. "Can't you take a joke? Everyone else agrees with me." That sentence followed me into adulthood. By my late 20s, I had built a quiet, stable life away from her influence. A decent job, a small apartment, friends who didn't question my worth. And for the first time, I felt safe. Then came the text. "Dinner tomorrow night, just us. I miss you." I stared at my phone for a long time. A part of me knew better, but another part, the child who still wanted approval, won. I told myself this was growth. I told myself people change. I told myself this wasn't another setup. That lie would cost me more than I imagined. The restaurant she chose was upscale, loud enough for privacy, public enough for an audience. I should have recognized the strategy immediately. When I arrived, she wasn't alone. My aunt, my cousin, two family friends I hadn't seen in years, all seated, all watching. My stomach dropped. My mom stood up, smiling too wide, and kissed my cheek like we were close. "Everyone, this is my daughter," she said, her voice sweet and sharp at the same time. Something was wrong. As I sat down, I felt it, that familiar tightening in my chest, the same feeling I'd had every time she'd turned my life into a performance. I didn't know yet that this dinner wasn't about reconnection, it wasn't about healing, it was about control. And before dessert arrived, my mother would remind me exactly who she thought I was, and who she planned to make me in front of everyone. That night wasn't just public humiliation, it was the beginning of a long, quiet revenge story, fueled by truth, patience, and inevitable karma. And I promise you, what happened next was no accident. At first, everything felt normal. Too normal. My mom waved the waiter over, ordered wine for the table without asking me, and launched into stories about her garden, her neighbors, her volunteer work. She was charming, warm, the version of her people always believed. Everyone laughed, everyone relaxed. I sat there smiling, nodding, pretending my hands weren't trembling under the table. This was how she always did it. She built comfort before she pulled the rug out. She asked about my job next, not because she cared, but because it was easy ammunition. "So," she said loudly, swirling her wine, "are you still at that temporary position?" Temporary. I'd been there 3 years. I explained calmly. I always explained calmly. She nodded, then sighed dramatically. "I just worry," she said, turning to the others. "She's always struggled with stability." There it was. A tiny comment, harmless on the surface, but I felt the familiar sting of public humiliation creeping in, subtle and slow. My aunt frowned sympathetically, at my mother, not me. My cousin avoided my eyes. That's when I realized this dinner wasn't spontaneous, it was staged. The questions kept coming. Why wasn't I married yet? Did I still live alone? Had I finally paid off my student loans, or was I still figuring things out? Each question was wrapped in concern. Each answer I gave was quietly reframed as a flaw. This was my toxic mother's specialty. She never yelled, she never insulted directly. She let other people draw the conclusions she wanted, and they always did. I tried to redirect. I asked about her trip last summer. She smiled, then laughed. "Oh, I forgot, you couldn't come. Money was tight, right?" The table went silent for half a second, just long enough. That silence was intentional. That pause was where the damage lived. I felt small, exposed, reduced to the version of myself she preferred to control. This wasn't a conversation, it was a performance. I realized then that this wasn't just about embarrassment. This was family betrayal, carefully choreographed, socially acceptable, and devastating. But here's what she didn't know. I had spent years learning how she operated, years watching her manipulate narratives, years understanding how she protected her image at all costs. And for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was observing. Every exaggerated sigh, every backhanded compliment, every carefully chosen word. She wanted me emotional, defensive, unstable. She wanted proof that her story about me was true. Instead, I stayed calm. That unnerved her. So she escalated. She leaned back, folded her arms, and said the sentence that finally made everything clear. "I just don't know where I went wrong with you." The table froze. My chest burned, but I said nothing. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. Because somewhere between the appetizer and that sentence, something shifted. This wasn't just about surviving her public humiliation anymore. This was about taking back control. And while everyone else thought I was shrinking, I was already planning the quietest, most devastating revenge of my life. Not loud, not messy, just patient. And eventually, karma would do the rest. After my mother said it, "I just don't know where I went wrong with you," no one rushed to defend me. That silence told me everything. My aunt cleared her throat. My cousin stared at her phone. One of the family friends nodded slowly, like my mother had just spoken a painful truth. That was the moment I understood the full scale of the family betrayal. This wasn't just my mom's narrative, it was a story she had been feeding them for years. I felt heat rise to my face, but I forced myself to breathe. Reacting was exactly what she wanted. She smiled then, a small, sad smile, the kind that said, "See what I have to deal with?" "I've always supported her," she continued, her voice trembling on purpose. "But she pushes people away. She's always been difficult." Difficult. That word had followed me my entire life. It was how my toxic mother explained away her cruelty. I opened my mouth to speak, then stopped. For the first time, I noticed something strange. Her version of my life didn't match reality. She talked about me borrowing money constantly. I hadn't asked her for anything in years. She mentioned jobs I'd quit after a few months. She'd never acknowledged the promotions. She claimed she'd offered help when I was struggling. In truth, she'd stopped answering my calls. It wasn't just exaggeration, it was rewriting history. Gaslighting performed live, and everyone was buying it. I realized then that this dinner wasn't meant to humiliate me just once. It was meant to cement a permanent image. Unstable daughter, ungrateful child, the problem. The waiter came with the main courses. No one thanked him. My mom waited until the plates were down before delivering the next blow. "You know," she said casually, "I still talk to your ex." My heart dropped. "He always asks how you're doing. He worries about you. I told him you're still figuring things out." That wasn't concern. That was control. She was reaching into parts of my life she had no business touching, using them to remind me she still had access. That was when something else clicked. She wasn't just enjoying this, she needed it. My success threatened her. My independence broke her narrative. This public humiliation wasn't about me failing, it was about her trying to pull me back down. I looked around the table and finally met their eyes. They weren't cruel, they were convinced. That realization hurt more than anything she'd said. Because family betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with quiet agreement. I smiled then, slowly, calmly. My mother noticed. Her smile faltered for half a second. She leaned forward. "Say something," she urged gently. "They deserve to hear your side." That was the trap. If I defended myself, I'd look unstable. If I stayed silent, she'd control the story. So I did something unexpected. I thanked her. "Thank you for inviting me," I said softly. "It's been eye-opening." The table went quiet again. My mom blinked. That wasn't in her script. I stood up, excused myself, and walked to the restroom, not because I was weak, but because I finally knew something she didn't. She had underestimated me. This wasn't the end of my revenge story. It was the moment I stopped being the audience. And once you see the strings, you start planning how to cut them. I locked myself in the restroom and stared at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me, not because she was broken, but because she was finally awake. My phone buzzed. A message from my cousin. "Are you okay?" That single question did more damage than everything my toxic mother had said at the table, because it confirmed something I hadn't wanted to believe. They knew. They had sensed the tension. They had watched the public humiliation unfold, and they stayed silent anyway. That was the moment the weight of the family betrayal fully landed. I typed back a simple reply. "I will be." I washed my hands, fixed my hair, and took a deep breath before walking back out. The table went quiet as soon as I sat down. My mom studied my face like she was searching for cracks. She wanted tears, she wanted anger. She got neither. Instead, she shifted tactics. "I hope you didn't feel attacked," she said sweetly. "We're just worried about you." Worried, that word again. I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. "You've always been worried about me." Her shoulders relaxed. That was her mistake. "You've worried about my job," I continued, "my relationships, my finances, my decisions." I smiled, keeping my voice calm. "It's interesting," I added, "how much you talk about my life, considering how little you actually know about it." The table stiffened. My mom's smile froze. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused her. I had simply stated a fact. She laughed nervously. "Oh, sweetheart." "I haven't borrowed money from you in years," I said gently. "I've been promoted twice, and I didn't push away my ex. You told him I wasn't ready for commitment without asking me." Silence crashed down hard. My aunt looked at my mother. My cousin's head snapped up. This wasn't dramatic, it was precise, and that made it dangerous. My mother's face flushed. She tried to recover. "You're remembering things wrong," she said quickly. "You've always had a selective memory." Gaslighting, right on schedule. That was the breaking point. Something inside me finally let go, not in anger, in clarity. "I kept receipts," I said quietly. "Not emails, not screenshots. Texts, voicemails, dates, patterns, years of them. I didn't pull them out. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. Because for the first time, the room felt uncertain, not about me, about her." My mother pushed her chair back slightly, her voice sharper now. "Why would you embarrass me like this?" There it was. Not, "Why would you hurt me?" Not, "Why would you feel this way?" "Why would you embarrass me?" That sentence told everyone everything. I stood up. "I'm going home," I said calmly, "but I want you all to know something." I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. I didn't come here to fight. I came here because I trusted my mother. I paused. And now I understand who she really is. No shouting, no tears, just truth. As I walked out of that restaurant, my legs shook, but my mind was clear. That night wasn't just public humiliation, it was liberation. Because once the illusion cracks, karma doesn't need help, and my revenge, it was about to begin. I didn't confront my mother after that night. I didn't block her. I didn't send long messages explaining my pain. That would have been too obvious, too emotional, too easy for her to twist. Instead, I went quiet. For a toxic mother, silence is terrifying. She texted the next morning. "Last night got out of hand. We should talk." I replied hours later. "I agree." 2 words, no emotion. That was the beginning of my revenge. I didn't accuse. I didn't defend myself. I let her assume she still had control. Over the next few weeks, I did something I'd never done before. I listened. Every call, every message, every casual comment she made about how worried everyone was. She talked more when she thought she was winning, and she revealed everything. She admitted, without realizing it, that she'd shared details of my life with extended family, coworkers, even neighbors. She joked about helping my ex understand why our relationship failed. She bragged about how everyone trusted her side of the story. This wasn't just family betrayal, it was a pattern, and patterns are powerful, especially when exposed. I started documenting again, not emotionally, logically. Dates, times, who she spoke to, what she claimed. I didn't correct her lies publicly. I let them age, because lies collapse under their own weight when left alone. Then I did the most dangerous thing possible. I improved my life quietly. No announcements, no social media posts, no updates fed back to her. New position at work, financial stability, a calm, steady routine. She noticed. "You seem distant," she said on one call. "I just worry you're isolating yourself." Concern weaponized again. I smiled while she spoke. She had no idea how little access she had left. Then came the opportunity. My cousin reached out, not casually, seriously. She wrote, "I didn't know if I should say this, but things you said at dinner didn't match what Aunt has been telling us." There it was, the crack. I didn't dump evidence. I didn't attack my mother's character. I asked one simple question. "What has she told you?" And I listened. As my cousin spoke, the contradictions piled up. Stories didn't line up. Timelines shifted. I gently clarified with facts, not emotions. No insults, no accusations, just truth. That's the kind of public humiliation my mother never saw coming, the kind that happens privately when no performance can save you. Word spread quietly. Questions were asked about her, not me. And for the first time, my toxic mother wasn't the trusted narrator. She sensed it. Her tone changed. Calls became shorter, messages more frantic. "You've been talking about me," she accused one night. I laughed softly. "No," I said, "I've been answering questions." That silence on the line, that was fear. Because karma doesn't announce itself. It waits. And my revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about letting everyone finally see her without me saying a word. Karma didn't arrive loudly. It didn't crash in with shouting or dramatic confrontations. It arrived in whispers. My mother started losing invitations first. A family brunch she always hosted, canceled. A holiday gathering, smaller this year. A birthday dinner she assumed she'd attend, already full. She noticed. "People are acting strange," she told me during one of our calls. "I don't understand what I did." That was the most honest sentence she'd ever spoken. I didn't explain. I didn't comfort her. I simply listened. Because for the first time, the public humiliation wasn't happening to me. It was happening to her, quietly, socially, in the spaces she valued most. My cousin called me one evening, her voice low. "She told everyone you cut her off because you're unstable, but It doesn't make sense anymore. That was the moment the narrative officially collapsed. When people start questioning a storyteller, every story they've told becomes suspicious. My toxic mother tried to regain control the only way she knew. How? She escalated. She sent group messages filled with concern, posted vague quotes about ungrateful children, made emotional phone calls to relatives, crying, confused, wounded. But without an audience willing to applaud, the performance fell flat. Someone finally asked her directly, "Why do your stories about her keep changing?" She had no answer. That question followed her, and it did more damage than any accusation I could have made. Then came the moment that felt almost unreal. A family gathering, one I hadn't planned to attend. I walked in quietly. My mother was already there. She looked smaller somehow, less confident, less in control. Conversations paused when I entered, but not in the way they used to. This time, eyes turned toward her. Someone asked me about my work. Another complimented how calm I seemed. Normal questions, respectful ones. My mother sat silent. No jokes, no corrections, no rewriting my words. For the first time, she had nothing to add. That was karma in its purest form. Not punishment, exposure. She tried to pull me aside later. "Why are you doing this to me?" she whispered. I looked at her and felt something unexpected. Nothing. "I'm not," I said honestly. "I stopped protecting your version of me." Her face crumpled, because she finally understood something she'd never considered before. Without my silence, her power was gone. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger, it was release. The family betrayal she orchestrated had turned inward. The public humiliation she designed had reversed, and all I had done was tell the truth when asked. That night, as I drove home, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Because karma doesn't need cruelty, it needs consistency. And my toxic mother had finally met the consequences of her own behavior without me ever raising my voice. After everything settled, I expected to feel relieved. What I didn't expect was grief. Not for the relationship I lost, but for the one I never truly had. When the noise faded, when the tension dissolved, I finally allowed myself to sit with the truth. My toxic mother was never going to change, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. Accepting that hurt more than the public humiliation ever did. For a long time, I believed endurance was love, that loyalty meant absorbing pain quietly, that forgiveness required access. I was wrong. Healing didn't come from confrontation, it came from boundaries. I stopped explaining myself, stopped correcting lies unless someone asked, stopped chasing validation from people who benefited from misunderstanding me. Some family members apologized, some stayed silent. Both responses told me what I needed to know. Family betrayal doesn't always end with reconciliation. Sometimes it ends with clarity. My mother tried, once more, to pull me back. She sent a long message late one night, half apology, half accusation. She said she felt abandoned. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. She was right. I didn't recognize myself either. I was calmer, stronger, less reactive. I replied with a single paragraph. "I'm open to a relationship built on respect and honesty. If that's not possible, I wish you peace." No blame, no defense. That message wasn't for her. It was for me. Walking away didn't make me cruel. It made me whole. Over time, something else happened. People stopped asking me about her, stopped framing me as the problem. They saw me as I was, without her commentary. That was the quiet gift of karma, not revenge, freedom. I learned that revenge doesn't always mean watching someone fall. Sometimes it means refusing to fall with them. and public humiliation loses its power when you stop performing. I still think about that dinner sometimes, the restaurant, the table, the moment I realized the truth. It no longer hurts, it reminds me how far I've come. Because the opposite of family betrayal isn't loyalty, it's self-respect, and once you choose that, everything changes. People often ask me if I regret how everything ended. The truth is, I don't think of it as an ending anymore. I think of it as the moment my life finally became mine. For a long time after that dinner, I replayed it in my head, every word, every look, every silence that felt louder than shouting. But eventually, those memories lost their edge. They became lessons. I learned that a toxic mother doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes she looks loving, concerned, and generous, as long as you stay small. I learned that family betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people who know exactly where it hurts the most. And I learned that public humiliation only works when you believe you deserve it. I don't hate my mother. Hate would mean she still has space in my heart. What I feel now is distance. Healthy, intentional, necessary. We speak occasionally, polite, surface level, controlled. She no longer has access to my fears, my plans, or my vulnerabilities. And that boundary, that quiet line I finally drew, is the most powerful thing I've ever done. People think revenge has to be dramatic, explosive, final. But the most effective revenge I've ever experienced was becoming someone she couldn't control, embarrass, or define. No yelling, no exposure posts, no public confrontation, just growth. And eventually, karma did what it always does. It balanced the story. Not by destroying her, but by revealing her. As for me, I sleep better now. I trust myself. I don't second-guess my worth in rooms full of people. And when I walk into a restaurant, a family gathering, or any space where I used to feel small, I sit down knowing exactly who I am. Strong, whole, unashamed. So I'll leave you with this. If someone who's supposed to love you keeps turning you into the villain of their story, what would you do? Would you keep performing for them? Or would you quietly step out of the role and let the truth speak for itself?